Welcome back. So today we are going to do something a little bit different in a different place. We're going to talk about these FiiO SP3 active speakers. So these are active speakers. They have their own amplifier built into them. You just need a line out from some kind of amp. I was using these with the Flamingo because the Flamingo is actually designed to run active speakers on your desktop at your desk. So I thought it was a natural match with the SP3s. So this is what the SP3s look like up close. They actually do have some LED lighting effects on the bottom, which is a little bit hard to see in the lighting here, but that's what it looks like. The front end actually has the business. This is a 1-inch silk dome tweeter. This is a 3.5-inch, they call it a midwoofer. So a carbon fiber midwoofer is what they call it. On the back side, we do have some active speaker good things. So this is a bass port. This is a volume knob. This is actually a bass knob. If you don't like bass, you can actually turn the bass almost off. There's an LED switch. There's a left-right switch. There is an input switch, so you could actually run this off of the RCAs or a normal 3.5-inch line in. Power button, and then cables to the other speaker. So pretty typical active speaker, kind of the minimum that you would like to see on the back of your active speaker. So I think, let me see if we hit, and these are notes, and I'm not sure you can actually read the notes, but they are more for me. So as I said, 1-inch silk tweeter, 3.5-inch carbon fiber midwoofer. There's an S-shaped bass tube. So they call this the S-shaped tube, and you can't really see the S shape, but the midwoofer, 3.5 inches, that's not going to quite cut it for most bass jobs. So they actually, and this is very typical, they put a S-shaped, get a lot of distance or area and length to increase the bass, get it to resonate a little bit so it sounds a little deeper and a little bit fuller, and pipe it out the back, and hopefully it kind of resonates against your wall. And that's kind of what these things do as well. So metal cabinets, these are metal as opposed to wood or opposed to plastic. They're LED effects on the bottom. And they really try to address all the shortcomings of small speakers with the bass tube, the directionality. They have waveguides. There's a lot of engineering in a small box to get around typical small speaker problems. So I do think, in general, I think they try to address lots and lots of things that aren't great on small speakers, and I think they did a pretty reasonable job on it. But there are a couple things missing. Bluetooth is one of them. I think if I'm going to go through if I'm going to go through and buy active speakers, I would have preferred to have them directly connection or castable with Bluetooth. I think that would have been a really nice thing to add. And the subwoofer out is going to be another thing. So again, I said there's a lot of engineering here to produce enough bass so it sounds very reasonable and natural. But having a subwoofer out, and you can, of course, run an external amplifier with a sub out, and then use that as the crossover and the sub out, and then the line outs. You can actually add a subwoofer that way. But it would have been nice to have a sub out just on the box. And again, at the end of the day, this is a 3.5-inch carbon fiber midwoofer. Size does matter, and when you compare it to bigger size speakers, they're always going to sound smaller because they are smaller, and size really does matter with speakers. So sound. So I'll say there's almost two modes with these guys. If I happen to start using them when I was at my desk, because I sit at my desk all day and I listen to music all day, I have a 2.1 system, and I'm really used to hearing a left and a right and a subwoofer. So putting these on my desk, kind of behind my monitors, I think that's not really the optimal place for these guys. I think they tend to be a little bit brighter. And you can actually see, if you look at the frequency graph that FiiO put together, you can kind of see this is a very slight tilt upward. It's sort of it's pretty slight. So I wouldn't say these are bright at all, but there is a slight brightness to them, and especially if you are close to them, they are a little bit brighter. They go down to about 50 hertz, and then it kind of drops off on the bass response. But yeah, I think generally if you're sitting close to them, I think they sound a lot like the graph. And if you're sitting them at your desk, you tend to really notice the mids and the treble. They're very clear. There's just a lot of clarity there compared to my older speakers, which are a little bit warmer and smoother. So I would call it attention-grabbing clarity. And these are really kind of small, fast diaphragms compared to my old ones. They tend to sound almost like comparing BAs to dynamic drivers. These have a lot of speed compared to my older system, which do not. My older ones are definitely slower and I don't know, a lot warmer. And if you're used to those older, warmer, smoother speakers, these will sort of grab your attention and be a little bit distracting. And that's basically what happened to me. Is when I had these on my desk, they were a little bit too distracting because I've been sitting at my desk listening to music for so long. I'm used to how it sounds and how it kind of works as background music. These are, sitting close to these is a little bit more distracting than I thought it was going to be. And the bass, I think it's a mixed bag. I think the ports and the tubes and the ducts, they always tend to sound okay. They're not quite the same as having larger diaphragms, maybe as you would get in a larger full-size speaker like this. But with some trial and error on positioning, you can kind of get it near the wall, away from the wall, and get it to a bass response that sort of matches the mids. Not going to quite be a 2.1 experience. I think I'm just so used to it, so I think I notice it more. But again, if these were mine and not loaned to me through Apos Audio, I would actually just add a subwoofer to it through a DAC amp. But this is really bass style that really complements the mids, and it's not really a floor shaking style bass. You're not going to get that on a small cabinet like this anyway. But if you position it on a wall, so if these were back against the wall, and you were just projecting music into the room and your listening position was back further, then I think that's where these really do well. And I think maybe under a TV, maybe as a bookshelf system, I think that's where everything comes together on these, and they do sound better in that way. The bass really joins the mids, and you end up with a richer, warmer sound. I much prefer them in this room, standing back, compared to when they were on my desk behind my monitors and I was too close to them. They sound a lot more natural when you can stand back, and the bass actually sounds a little better. Something about the projection and the directionality that they pulled off with this particular tube and what they're doing didn't really work for me up close, but sitting back or standing back, everything kind of comes together. It's actually quite nice. And I do think they do pretty well for their size. It's just really hard to reproduce a full-size speaker in a small speaker through a lot of engineering. And I think FiiO did a really nice job at it. And if you're constrained on space, certainly this is a really nice option. But if you have the space, having a bigger speaker will always win that battle. And the value, I don't think $299 is a crazy number for this amount of engineering, for what they do, what they sound like. But if I own them and these weren't a loaner, I would most definitely just pair them with a subwoofer and run them through some kind of amp and be done with it. And that will, of course, move the $299 up a few $100s, but I think you would end up with a really nice system in the end. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and I will see you next time.